Welcome. Let's discuss about Kurukshetra July 2018 edition. In this we would talk about the Panchayati Raj system. Now some of the basic headings for this topic for today would be the Panchayati Raj system, how it evolved, the idea of Rashtriya Gram Swaraj Abhiyan, its objective, it's really very important for your mains. Then we have the mission mode project for e-Panchayat, the information education and communication, the PESA Act in the tribal areas and the PES suit. So let's first talk about the rural infrastructure. With the planning commission, you had the Balwant Rai Mehta committee that proposed three-tier system, that was Zilla Parishad at district level, Panchayat Samiti at block level and Gram Panchayat at the village level. Later on you had Ashok Mehta committee which talked about two levels, that was Zilla Parishad at district level and Mandal Panchayat at base level. You had the LM Singhvi committee that talked about the decentralization and establishment of Gram Sabha. So those were some of the basic committees and recommendations that were there. Then you have the Rashtriya Gram Swaraj Abhiyan that was released. Now this Abhiyan basically talked about from Gramoday to Rashtroday, that's developing the village to developing the nation, talked about Gram Swaraj. Then you have the Panchayati Raj scheme where we talk about nearly 2.5 lakh villages being involved with Panchayati Raj system in India. We have nearly 1/3 of the seats which are reserved for women in this area. Then you have the involvement of women which is around 13 lakh in the local government, which is very high and I believe the highest among the world in any political system. So that's a recent development, that's a very indicative development by India. Then you have Y.K. Sabharwal committee judgment that was given, that was mainly talking about the panchayats as the pillars for grassroots level development and the development of the nation west in the development of the Panchayati Raj. So we talk about the democratic base of the Indian polity that needs to be widened off and bring about changes in the multi-level federation. So you have the developments that are seen under Article 243A of the Constitution. Those are really important. The next important topic that we discuss is Rashtriya Gram Swaraj Abhiyan, that talks about Sabka Saath, Sabka Gaon, Sabka Vikas. So we talk about developing the panchayats and the Panchayati Raj. The idea is to develop the governance, to enhance the capability of the panchayats, to strengthen the Gram Sabha, to bring in creation of provisions for implementation of the programs, develop a network for support system, capacity building, strengthen up the institution, support the panchayat. Now how can we provide the funding and the coverage? So it's 60-40 basis, 60 by center, 40 by state. In the northeast and the hilly it's 90-10. 90 by center, 10 by state, and in union territory it's 100% centrally sponsored. Now what are the prerequisites to assess the fund under the Rashtriya Gram Swaraj Abhiyan? It basically talks about not less than 1/3 reservation for women, talks about regular Panchayati Raj elections, constitution of district planning committees, preparation and submission of reports and co-locations that should be built. Then you have the national plan for technical assistance. It talks about the management and planning and supervision. It talks about implementation of capacity building, creation of resource pool for the trainers, facilitating convergence of ideas, bringing in research and technology, cross-state sharing, conducting various workshops, development and maintenance of online monitoring system, development of academic collaborations and national program management. Now under the mission mode project for e-Panchayat, which is very important, we focus on development of ICT or information and communication technology, bring in web-based applications for Panchayat, and those would also be covering through the Department of Telecommunication under the BharatNet project. So you have incentivization of panchayats. Under that you have the Deen Dayal Upadhyay Panchayat Sashktikaran Puraskar and Nanaji Deshmukh Rashtriya Gram Gaurav Sabha Puraskar. Those are the two efforts in order to recognize the good performing Gram Panchayats and the Panchayats that could be identified. So capacity building, training of the workers of the Panchayati Raj, bringing in more collaboration, developing good training modules, regular exposure to the visits and strengthening the local institutions are some of the major ideas. Then under financial data analysis, we talk about collection of fiscal performances, resource augmentation, improvement on the budgeting. We also talk about Gramoday Se Bharat Uday Abhiyan, where we talk about development of the panchayats. The gap funding is again very important. Under Article 243G of the Constitution, we talk about the economic development plan for the panchayat and the 29 subjects that are listed under the panchayats. We also talk about Krishi Kalyan Abhiyan, which works under 111 aspirational districts. Now these districts cover not in the districts where you have not less than 25, where the number of villages are less than 25, and all the villages should be covered under those districts. So those fall under the Krishi Abhiyan, Krishi Kalyan Abhiyan. So that's important. Then we talk about 100% coverage for bovine vaccination, mainly for the foot and mouth diseases. Similarly, 100% coverage for sheep and goat eradication of Pesti rheumatis. We have fiscal strengthening and fiscal devolution, which we talk under the 14th Financial Commission, which talks about transforming the panchayats. We talk about providing grants in two forms, the basic grant and the performance grant. Performance grant is based on the amount of receipts and expenditure. However, the basic grant talks about the support and the strengthening of the delivery mechanism. We have the Gram Jyoti scheme that talks about, that has been released by the state of Telangana, and it aims to strengthen the Gram Panchayats. The next important topic is the Panchayat Enterprise Suite. This talks about two important softwares, ActionSoft and PriyaSoft, which basically aims to keep a track of the implementation programs and the execution of those. We have certain positive outcomes for those. Definitely there is increased devolution. Some of the challenges talks about how the states have not reported their data and have not developed this software in accordance to the line. Then the capacity building is something that we have already talked about, how we can bring in more training, bring in more capacity requirements and develop the capacity needs for the region. So this is mainly through the democracy, participation and participatory planning approach. For the development, you have various schemes. You have the Minegra scheme, or the 100 days minimum guaranteed employment. You have Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, that's for housing. Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana, that's for the rural roads. So those are some of the major schemes which are centrally sponsored, enacted under the Panchayati Raj. Then you have certain challenges that are seen. Mainly it's for the training in major states. Then you have the resources that are there in the panchayats are not basically used or generated in line with the revenue generation as it should be. So what are the major programs that should be delivered through panchayats? So through panchayats we talk about development of social sector. We talk about encouraging the fiscal powers, the grant from the financial commission. So you have the 14th Finance Commission, good and timely audit. You have the great panchayats, improvement of social capital, bringing in more transparency into the system. Then you have PESA in the tribal areas. So PESA is basically the panchayat extension. So Bhuria committee basically was predominantly responsible for it, and the idea was to extend the panchayat into the areas where you have the tribal minority or marginalized society that's there. So extension to scheduled area in 1996 was the PESA Act that was signed, and this talked about the fifth scheduled areas that were concerned under this ministry. So you have the working group that was established. The tribal communities in the marginalized areas were chalked out, and we were trying to deal with and develop good dimensions with those central committees. So approval of the plan, identifying the beneficiaries and certifying the utilization of the funds was some of the important things that should be done. So this PESA talked about the ownership of minor forest products, the power that should be given to prevent the alienation of the land, to manage the village market, to grant prospective license for mining and so on. Then under the natural resource management, we talk about the indigenous use of knowledge that could be done by the tribals. The role of women in the panchayat was indeed important. So we have nearly 1/3 of the seats that is being reserved for the women. UN adopted a convention on political right for women in 1952. And since then, you are talking about the women empowerment and women's role in decision making. So you have Article 15(3) of the Constitution that enables the state to have special provisions for the state. Balwant Rai Mehta committee talked about 20-member Panchayat Samiti, of which 2 members should be women and children, interested to work for women and children and women members. Then you have Ashok Mehta committee, which said that even those 2 women members, if they are not among the polled women members, they would be co-opted into the panchayat. Then you have Article 243D that talks about 1/3 of the seats that should be reserved at each Panchayati Raj institutional level, and you have nearly 13.45 lakh elected women representatives in India. So that's a very big amount. Some of the achievements are like the Sarpanch in the Chansamand Gram Panchayat in Karnal, Haryana developed a 3-pond system under the Minegrai scheme. You have developments for the training programs, paved roads, the Dhyani Mian Khan Gram Panchayat, where you have a training center that has been established. So those are some of the model examples of women being actively working for the Gram Panchayats. However, there are certain challenges. It talks about patriarchy, it talks about the encroachment, the issues of two-child norm, the low functioning women Gram Panchayats that are there, and lack of cooperation that is being seen. However, government is working with numerous initiatives. The 110th Amendment Bill talks about the 50% reservation of women in the panchayat level. Then you have Kerala Institute of Local Administration working for the training of the elected women committee. You have many way forwards that are there, which works from the existing 1/3 to 50% of the proportion that should be part of it. The Preconception and the Prenatal Diagnostic Technique Act 1994 is indeed important. It could be a part of the selective answer that you could write as a form of case study, and it could be a kind of important question as well for your exam. So it talks about the prohibition of sex selection, the records that should be monitored, the preservation of the records, and then you have certain imprisonment guidelines that are there. That's again important. So what should be done to strengthen the panchayat? So panchayats can be strengthened through the idea of devolution. So bringing in new fiscal arrangements are some of the important ideas. Reviewing the fiscal position of the panchayats. Under this we talk about the PSI scheme, that's the Panchayat Empowerment and Accountability Initiative scheme, which talks about monitoring the Gram Panchayat, motivating the panchayat to put in accountability framework, measuring the devolution index by 4F, that is the framework, function, finance and functionaries. So those 4F of the devolution index are really important. Then we talk about accountability and capacity building. So we aim to evaluate the performance, examine the accountability, bring in incremental indices that could be there, and rank the states based on those. So the study basically talks about these 5 parameters which are mentioned under different articles in the constitution, which are important to analyze the mandatory provisions of the constitution. And then finally the devolution index, the 4Fs that we have already studied. The result shows that you have Maharashtra, which is ranked first, followed by Kerala, Karnataka and Tamil Nadu. So Maharashtra is way ahead of others. Similarly, you have 10 states which are performing good. So those are mentioned here in the 5th scheduled areas. So you have Meghalaya, which has been exempted, and similarly some parts of Mizoram has also been exempted. So those are some of the highlights that we have covered from the Kurukshetra. The detail is available at Examri's Current Affairs based on Yojana and based on Kurukshetra section. We will be coming up with a summary for Yojana and Kurukshetra every month, so stay tuned. This time the Rashtriya Gram Swaraj Abhiyan and the Mission Mode project for e-Panchayat, 2 of those are really important. So cover those carefully for your upcoming mains as well. Have a great day ahead.